I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday. I'm Amaral Walker, and today for Frederica Whitfield. And we begin this hour with the potential major breakthrough on new gun legislation. Just moments ago, Senate negotiators announcing they have struck a tentative agreement on new gun control laws. Today, the bipartisan group of senators announcing several new measures aimed at addressing gun violence. At this point, the deal is just in principle and not yet written, but critically, it does have the support of 10 Republican senators, signaling it could be strong enough to overcome any threat of a filibuster. The new legislation coming in the wake of several mass shootings across the country, including an attack on a Texas elementary school that claimed the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers. Now, this framework of the agreement includes modest gun restrictions and broader investments into mental health and school security. We have team coverage of these developments. Joe Johns is with the president in Delaware, but let's begin with Daniela Diaz on Capitol Hill. Daniela, what can you tell us about this compromise?
Well, it just broke a little over 2 hours ago, Amara, and it is just a framework, as you said, no legislative text yet, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what this proposal includes. It would have support for state crisis intervention orders, investment in children and family mental health services, protections for victims of domestic violence, funding for school-based mental health and supportive services, funding for school safety resources and telehealth investments, and notably, too, an enhanced review process for buyers under the age of 21, and also penalties for straw purchasing. This is pretty narrow in its scope, but still something, which is what Democrats are saying as they put out their press releases today on this Sunday afternoon. This announcement, notably too, has been signed by 10 Republicans. Remember, because of that 50-50 split in the Senate, there needs to be at least 10 Republicans on board to advance that legislation and break that 60-vote threshold for the filibuster. Now, I do want to note that an aide actually told our Dana Bash earlier today, a Republican aide, saying that this quote is an agreement on principles, not legislative text, and those details are going to be very critical to get Republicans over the finish line on this legislation should they eventually get to a vote. Right now, as we keep noting again and again, it's just a framework and it's agreement on principle. But I do want to note that the top Republican in the Senate did praise this framework in a statement earlier. That top Republican being Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader. He said, quote, "I appreciate the hard work on this important issue, and the principles they have announced today show the value of dialogue and cooperation." Now, they're not taking a victory lap yet. There's still a lot of work ahead, and I think Coons, Senator Chris Coons, who was part of these bipartisan negotiations, he spoke to Dana just a little while ago today, and he really puts it, I think, in the best way, saying that there's still a long way to go before they can cross the finish line on this issue. Take a listen to what he said.
It's very delicate still.
That's right. There's a lot of work still to do to take this framework agreement and reduce it to legislative language. We shouldn't take a victory lap yet, but I'm so grateful for the leadership that senators like Chris Murphy and John Cornyn have shown in getting us to this point. And I'm optimistic that the pressure that we are all feeling from our constituents to act and to deliver real results will get us to the president's desk with legislation this time.
We're hearing, Amara, from Democrats who are noting that while this framework is very narrow in its scope, it's very significant. They recognized and noted that they had to work with Republicans to try to make some sort of incremental change on gun safety reform. And the whole goal in these talks, these bipartisan talks that you noted, began after the Uvalde shooting, the horrific shooting in Texas at an elementary school, and the racially motivated Buffalo shooting in New York. They wanted these talks to find some sort of consensus with Republicans so that they could pass legislation in the Senate. So this is obviously the first step for them to be able to do that.
Right. Quite significant common ground in theory, but as we heard, it is a delicate situation. So I think a lot of people crossing their fingers. Daniela, thank you. Let's go now to Joe Johns, who is traveling with the president in Wilmington, Delaware. So, Joe, what is President Biden saying about this possible gun deal?
Amber, they put out a statement very quickly after that announcement was made, acknowledging the significance of this development, essentially that this was the first move toward dealing with gun crimes in the United States just in decades. The president urged the Congress to move quickly, also thanked the senators who were involved in the negotiations. And the president essentially also said that the Congress doesn't agree with everything that was in that deal. He said he didn't essentially think everything that is needed is in the deal, but he did say it reflects important steps in the right direction. So he said there should be no excuses for them to move forward, get this to his desk, get it through the House and the Senate in order to start saving lives. Nonetheless, as you all have already indicated, the point here really, despite the fact that it sounds like an endorsement, is that this is just a framework, as you know, a framework essentially that has to be put together in legislative language before the deal is done. Amra, back to you.
Yeah, it's not done until it's done. Daniela Diaz and Joe Johns, appreciate you both. Thank you. Congresswoman Dina Titus is a Democrat from Nevada. She is a member of the Homeland Security Committee and faces a primary election on Tuesday. Congresswoman, really appreciate you joining us on this Sunday. Let me start by getting your reaction to this potential new gun bill in the Senate. It is a framework. It's verbally agreed upon, nothing in writing yet. Look, it doesn't raise the minimum age for purchasing semi-automatic rifles or address access to high-capacity ammunition like the House bill did. But what are your thoughts? Are you optimistic, satisfied?
Anytime the Senate can take action, that's kind of a miracle. So I'm encouraged by that. And you think about this is the first time in about 30 years that the Republicans have been willing to stand up to the NRA. But there's a lot between now and the president's desk that can happen. The Senate has all kind of arcane procedural rules that individual senators can use to stall things. You've got the complication of writing the legislation itself, and you know the devil's in the details. By the time we get ready to look at it, it's going to be closer and closer to the election, and that makes things difficult to pass.
Right, but how much are they really standing up to the NRA? I mean, there's nothing about raising the minimum age to purchase a semi-automatic rifle or weapon to 21. I mean, if you look at just the past two mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde, both of the shooters were 18 years old who had purchased these semi-automatic weapons legally. Why is it so difficult to raise the age?
In some ways, it's kind of like a fig leaf. They do say you can now look at juvenile records for anybody buying a weapon like this between the ages of 18 and 21. That's as far as they were willing to go. In the House bill, we raised the age and thought that was certainly reasonable because you have to be 21 to buy a pistol, so why not? Other provisions they don't include are, one of them is my anti-bump stock bill, which is what the person used here in Las Vegas to kill 58 people at a concert.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you about that, right? I mean, this happened in your district. I can't believe it was already in 2017. I mean, it was several years ago. I mean, are you surprised that a ban on bump stocks wasn't included in the Senate bill, considering that, I mean, this was federally, I guess, imposed, right, by the Trump administration, but I guess it's still kind of tied up in the courts, so it's not being enforced, right?
That's right. The ATF imposed it through regulation, which the court said they did not have the authority to do. And we knew that. That's why I introduced the bill to start with. I had that bill in the House for several years. And just as part of the recent package we passed, that provision got more Republican votes than any other. It's 30-something. So I thought for sure there would be agreement on that. What's happened is that regulation was passed. It was overturned by a lower court. It's been put back in place by a court of appeals. And now there are some people, including some state attorney generals, who are trying to get the Supreme Court to take it up. That's why we need to put it in legislation so it will be the law of the land and not subject to these different whims of different states.
You know, I think it's frustrating for a lot of people who are advocating for common sense gun safety laws when they hear the bickering back and forth, the nuance of the conversations that are happening, and people from outside America looking at what's happening here, how politicized a gun debate has become as opposed to being a public health issue. And when similar mass shootings have happened in other countries, like in Great Britain or, in Norway, Australia and Germany banned semi-automatic weapons following mass shootings in those countries. New Zealand and Norway, they also passed similar laws. 1 + 2 = 3, right? If something happens and you impose certain measures and you see that mass shootings go down dramatically, you would think that same math is as simple as it is here.
You absolutely would. I mean, you can add New Zealand to that list, but in a country where there are more guns than people, and the culture is such that in some states they'll carry a gun to a wedding, and some people even wanted to bring guns onto the House floor, you can see why it's so difficult. Remember, the Brady bill outlawed automatic weapons, machine guns, but that went out of existence after so many years. We need to put it back in place because you don't need weapons of war that can just mow down school children or concert goers or people at a nightclub, people grocery shopping or going to church. I mean, this is just, it just shouldn't be the way this country is, but it's very difficult to get it passed. If we get anything, it'll be a small step. It'll be a first step. It won't be enough.
Yeah, but I think overall people are welcoming on both sides of the aisle incremental steps. I do have to ask you this, Congresswoman, before you go. You face a primary challenge on Tuesday, and your opponent has been endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders. Given that House Democrats like yourself haven't been able to pass meaningful gun legislation into law, tell us why you think the people of Nevada should vote for you on Tuesday.
Well, my opponent worked for Bernie Sanders when he ran before, so it's not surprising that she got that endorsement. But you've got to look at the record. While they're tweeting and talking about things, I'm getting things done and delivering for Southern Nevada. So I feel confident that people know me here. They know what I've done. They know my integrity and my work ethic, and that's what I'm campaigning on.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Congresswoman Dina Titus. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ahead this hour, a chilling scene in Idaho as dozens of members of a white nationalist group were arrested just moments before police say they had planned to riot at a pride event. We're going to have those details. Plus, it's the day some parents have been waiting for a long time. We'll tell you when COVID vaccines for children under 5 could be available.
Egypt is transitioning towards a sustainable, circular economy. Through the opening of the Gabal Al Asfar wastewater treatment plant, it is using treated water to irrigate agricultural land and is producing organic fertilizers. The plant has been designed to reduce waste and optimizes the use of water resources. It generates electricity and saves carbon emissions, ensuring that over 8 million people across the country live better, healthier lives.
Almost all carbon emissions come from industries that shape our world. But at Standard Chartered, we believe progress doesn't have to cost our planet. That's why we're helping our clients change the way they operate. by mobilizing $300 billion in green and transition finance, accelerating the transition to a net zero world. Because where others see problems, we see potential. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.
Redwood Materials is a sustainable battery materials company. So, we focus on building a closed-loop ecosystem for lithium-ion batteries. We recycle old lithium-ion batteries of all different types, both automotive, but also consumer electronics. We take the materials out of those batteries, refine them, extract them, and then remanufacture them into new components that can go directly back into battery manufacture. So I see this eventually, going to be the vast majority of the materials that are going into batteries that will be recycled in the future. Batteries are amazing because they are so recyclable. More than 90% of the materials, those critical materials in the battery, can be reused many, many times without degradation. I think people are really realizing the benefits of having a high recycled material content, both in terms of the environmental footprint of the batteries, but also the cost of those materials.
The world's biggest business stories. From every corner of the globe. Marketplace Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East.
New details today after police arrested more than 30 members of a white nationalist group in Idaho. Officers confronted the Patriot Front group on Saturday. There they are on their knees and arrested. Dozens were piled in the back of a moving truck. Police say they were traveling to a pride event where they were hoping to set off a riot. One of those taken into custody was a leader of the far-right faction. CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is joining us with more. Wow. So police were able to intervene just in time.
Yeah, it certainly seems so. And it's all because of a tip, a concerned citizen, a person who saw them getting into this U-Haul at a local hotel. Dozens of people, the tipster described as getting into this U-Haul with masks and shields and all wearing the same clothing, khakis and a blue shirt. And so within minutes, police were able to intercept them and take them into custody. And that's the video you see there. They're wearing masks. Certainly very concerning. And I don't think that law enforcement has a full account yet of what these individuals were up to. And so what we're seeing is so far the local police, they're charging them with this misdemeanor count of conspiracy to riot. They were all charged and all booked, and their photos had just been released. I don't know if we have that yet, but police obviously wanting to get more information. The FBI is now involved as well, assisting in this investigation. And what we know, as you said, the leader of this group, a man that the Anti-Defamation League, this group is followed. Law enforcement certainly knows them. Other groups know of them. They describe them as a white supremacist group based out of Texas. And its leader, Thomas Ryan Rousseau, he's 31, also taken into custody with all these other individuals. And really, what police say, this is certainly very troubled. They believe they traveled from 11 different states, places like Texas and Utah, Colorado, South Dakota, Illinois, Wyoming, all over the country, and met at this location at a hotel. And really what they were up to is not entirely clear. They had other things in the U-Haul that police were able to find, like paperwork, which indicated some kind of operation plan, the masks, the shields, and certainly the fact that they were all dressed alike. The tipster, Amr, interestingly, described them as almost like a small army. But luckily, police were able to intercept them and take them into custody. And like I said, law enforcement really knows a lot about this group. They describe them as individuals who believe that their ancestors conquered America and bequeathed it to them. They first became known during the Charlottesville, Virginia rally, the Unite the Right rally in 2017, when they separated from another group that was there. So they've been on the radar of officials. And Amra, one of the things that officials are going to be asking is, how were they able to gather like this? Was there something missed by law enforcement officials that they should have caught? And obviously, still a lot more information needs to be known and exactly what they were up to. Many of them are expected in court on Monday, and the police there are saying that they could potentially face additional charges.
Shimon, it's frightening to even think that they were this organized when you look at the evidence, that the plan's on paper, but thank goodness for that tipster. Shimon Prokopez, appreciate your reporting as always. Thanks so much. So that thwarted attack at a Pride event comes as we remember the victims of the deadliest attack on the LGBTQ community in American history. Today marks 6 years since the Pulse nightclub shooting. 49 people were killed after a gunman opened fire at the Orlando club in 2016. Today, the community is coming together to remember all of the lives lost. In a church ceremony a short time ago, the names of each victim was read aloud, followed by bell tolls. CNN's Nadia Romero is in Orlando with more. Nadia, as we know, the shooting shocked the nation. How else is a community mourning today, especially in light of the recent mass shootings we've all been dealing with?
Yes, every time, Emira, every year people say never again, but we still have mass shooting after mass shooting. But people here don't want everyone to forget what happened here at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando 6 years ago. What happened that night when 49 people were killed and 53 others wounded. And so at sunrise, Governor Ron DeSantis ordering all flags in the state to be flown at half-staff to remember those lives lost. Also across the state, there was a moment of silence at 9 a.m., a moment to reflect on the people who lost their lives and everyone who was impacted. And you can see behind me, people are coming out with balloons and flowers and taking a moment, a very emotional moment, to remember and to reflect. And it's not just people who had family members or loved ones who died that night, but we also spoke with a woman who came from Tampa. She drove an hour away. She says she does it every year. She brought her two nephews with her, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. She said it was so important to bring them so that they could understand this is what hatred looks like. Take a listen.
I usually come out every year. I mean, I really don't know anyone that was here the night it happened, but I mean, my heart goes out to the families. I mean, it's senseless. It happens all the time, and we just really, 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 just need to pay respect for things like that.
And so many people echoing that woman's sentiments. Tonight at 7 o'clock, there will be a big memorial. They're still preparing for that right now. And we know that last year, President Joe Biden put his seal of approval on a national memorial here, a museum to forever remember the victims. The organizers of the One Pulse Foundation still working on that, Amara, still accepting donations, still speaking with the families on how they want their loved ones to be remembered. Amara?
Nadia Romero, appreciate it. Thank you so much. So no evidence of widespread election fraud in 2020. That is the testimony expected to come tomorrow from a key conservative Republican attorney when he speaks to the January 6th investigative committee. What else we may hear in the second hearing? A preview next.
Connecting Africa in association with Afreximbank.
OPay is Nigeria's foremost financial inclusion service provider. Everywhere in Nigeria today, even in the remotest part of Nigeria, we have a large agency banking business with more than 500,000 agents across Nigeria. But we're also the last mile in terms of access to financial services for more than 10 million Nigerians, many of which do not have any form of bank account through the OPay digital wallet. We go to where banks cannot go to. We are much more nimble. We are more tech-oriented. Therefore, we can deploy in a more agile way and get to reach far many more areas. That is where you find OPay. The excluded in Nigeria will be truly brought into the formal financial services, and that's our mission.
Connecting Africa in association with Afreximbank.
And I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? Or would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front on CNN. This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
I'm James Roby. I'm the Global Head of Environmental Sustainability at Capgemini. People often ask, why should businesses care about sustainability? Well, first of all, quite frankly, an unsustainable pathway is not going to be good for any business. Businesses are reliant on having consumers that will buy from them. They're reliant on having employees who want to work for them. Increasingly, all the stakeholders of the business are asking difficult questions. So businesses which aren't taking sustainability seriously essentially are going to be out of business. But in reality, it's never too late to start. A great way to start is by trying to understand your own impacts as an organisation. Perhaps calculate your carbon footprint. Ultimately, we need everybody on this journey. So why not start today?
This is the screen where it happens. The moments that can change the world.
These are the faces we see, the voices we empower. This is the work that continues, who we are today and what we can become.
This is journalism that reflects the world we live in.
I'm Paula Hancock in Seoul. This is CNN.
A top Republican expert on election fraud will testify before the January 6th committee tomorrow. Attorney Ben Ginsberg, who played a critical role in the 2000 Florida recount case, is expected to testify that there was no evidence of widespread fraud in the 2020 election, something we all know. One of the committee's members had this warning for Americans this morning.
So I think it continues to be an absolutely shocking event in American history that there was an attempted political coup organized by the President of the United States in order to overthrow a presidential election to stay in office, to seize the presidency. And it's equally shocking that insurrectionary mob violence would be used as part of that plan in order to forestall the counting of electoral college votes and to block the transfer of power. So, I know that our first hearing pierced the sound barrier. People are paying attention, but Americans need to pay further attention because the danger is still out there. I mean, there was, I just read this morning that in Idaho, there was an LGBTQ Pride Day and a riot planned by domestic violent extremist groups, the same kinds of groups that were mobilized for the assault on the Capitol.
Joining us now is CNN contributor and former Nixon White House counsel John Dean. He's a subject of Watergate, blueprint for a scandal. John, great to see you again. I just want to get right to it. Fascinating to hear Congressman Jamie Raskin making that connection to what we saw in Idaho yesterday to January 6th. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that he's absolutely right. We all know that there is great concern about these white supremacist groups, and particularly the ones that are plain soldier, if you will. We don't know very much about the Idaho group yet, but I think we'll find out. And I also think it's very effective that they're using Ben Ginsburg as a witness tomorrow. That they have done that all throughout. They've used Republicans to make the points throughout. And this really takes away the argument that this is a Democratic attack on the president and some sort of witch hunt.
Yeah, could you expand on that a little bit? Because I was going to ask you about, how significant Ginsburg's testimony is expected to be. I mean, this is obviously about adding, piling on to those voices, saying, look, the big lie was a big lie.
Ben Ginsburg has been the go-to Republican expert on election law and election fraud. Nobody speaks with more authority. Nobody has more experience. If he found no fraud, there is no fraud. And he would have looked. He's an honest player. So this is going to be a very effective witness.
I want to turn to your CNN series, and I want to play a clip from tonight's episode that focuses on a fateful conversation that you had with Nixon just before testifying in front of Congress. Here it is.
The next day, the president called me to the Oval Office. As the door was being opened for me to walk in to the Oval Office, walking out of the opposite side of the Oval Office and chuckling were Haldeman and Ehrlichman. It was one of my more interesting meetings with the president. He said, I've drafted up some letters, why don't you take a look? Which he slides them across his desk, and I read them, and I first of all realized they were open confessions. He gave me a blanket resignation letter, actually two of them. Had I signed, I would be admitting to whatever they wanted to claim I was admitting to. They were both drafted by Ehrlichman, I later learned, and that doesn't surprise me. I understood the way the White House worked, that people at the top didn't take responsibility, but rather blamed somebody else, create a scapegoat. It was standard operating procedure.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, to build on that, I mean, what is, would you say, the most important lesson we need to learn from Watergate?
Well, Amara, as you were playing that clip, I was replaying it in my mind. So I just visited the Oval Office 50 years ago. Anyway, what we learned from that is that but for the fact that there was a taping system for Nixon, they would have all denied this. They would have all stonewalled, as they called it. They would have never given us any of this information. So we were fortunate. It looks like today, in these times, we have a surprising amount of electronic record that is coming out before the January 6th committee. And I think that's going to be very important because it's very hard evidence, and it makes these points that sometimes a witness alone can't make.
Always fascinating to talk to you, John Dean. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amara.
And be sure to tune in the final episodes of CNN's original series, Watergate, Blueprint for a Scandal, airing tonight starting at 9 p.m. only on CNN. All right, still ahead, nearly 50 members of a fraternity at the University of New Hampshire are facing arrest, accused of hazing new members.
here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here.
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly? Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school. I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you. You can hear gunshots every couple minutes. And now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
Nearly 50 fraternity members at the University of New Hampshire were issued arrest warrants accusing them of student hazing. The university's Sigma Alpha Epsilon chapter was suspended over the claims, according to the school. Police say at least 10 members were arrested, charged, and then released Friday. CNN's Polo Sandoval following the story for us. Hi there, Polo. So how did the school learn about these serious allegations?
So initially, Amara, it was the Sigma Alpha Epsilon's national chapter that came forward and alerted authorities there at the university that then initiated this investigation. This has to do with a hazing incident that reportedly happened on April 13th. And it was not long after officials learned about this that this investigation was started and now has ended in the issuing of as many as 46 arrest warrants. We're told about 10 of those warrants have already been sort of carried out. So basically 10 of these individuals have already come forward to answer to these charges. But again, that's out of 46. According to authorities, again, they really haven't released a whole lot of information at this point, I should add, given the nature of this investigation here. But the deputy county attorney is saying that they are really using this legal instrument to charge not only those that are believed to have participated in the hazing, but also those who may have known about it and said nothing. So that really does speak to just the scope of this investigation and why we are seeing close to 4 dozen arrest warrants issued. The university itself, they've actually issued a statement about this ongoing investigation, Amra. I want to read you a portion of that, and we can bring that up full for our viewers so they can read this along. They have wrote, or at least they wrote, that they have cooperated with police throughout the investigation, and the fraternity was interim suspended pending the outcome of the police investigation. We take any allegation of hazing very seriously, and now that the police investigation is complete, we will be initiating a formal conduct process. Now, the university did say that they contacted police in Durham, New Hampshire, almost immediately after learning this, Amra. So I think that really does speak to what the message that the university hopes to send not only its community, but also the rest of the country, that allegations of this nature will simply not be tolerated. But again, investigators have not released a whole lot of information about the actual incident that took place, only saying that it was serious enough to charge, again, almost 4 dozen people.
So we don't know exactly what happened during that hazing incident. I appreciate you reporting. Okay, we'll stand by for that information. Polo Sandoval, thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Parents rejoice. The FDA is finally set to meet this week to consider 2 COVID vaccines for children under 5. What's expected and what the Biden administration is doing to prepare?
Bring the energy. Welcome to the draft.
Team Series London goes to Team Callum.
3 pros, 1 amateur. Let's go.
When you follow a story, you may be asked to take risks. And sometimes go down a path that's not marked.
Where Iraqi troops would pre-position and these Americans would advise them.
These protests are a test for Hamas.
Any understanding between Israel and Gaza could quickly fall apart again.
The protesters are just outside a military base. They're throwing rocks and security forces firing tear gas.
When you dare to take risks, you witness passion and persistence.
And they just want to get their past be processed so they can get out of this facility.
And that's where change happens.
The one thing they have in common is a determination to keep going.
You've seen this explosion of life, and life has come back because of a new habitat that's been created with a whole load of big animals. So we went from this very intensive conventional farming system to a free-roaming, animal-based habitat creation project, rewilding.
One of the things you can do is introduce free-roaming herbivores, and all of them, the way they disturb the land, the way they trample and rootle, everything that they do has a hugely important knock-on effect, a sort of domino effect for biodiversity. We've seen here some of the rarest species in Britain. An amazing species that we had never had here before is the turtle dove. We're probably the only piece of land in the UK where turtle dove numbers are actually rising.
This butterfly is an incredibly rare butterfly. Here you can see it in their hundreds.
It's about kicking off natural processes again in a system. and then as human beings trying to stand back from it as much as possible and let nature perform.
To see a landscape in your own country and what you've been missing suddenly come to life has been this extraordinary revelation, this surprise, this feeling of just joy that we can do it.
I'm Jumana Karachi in Istanbul, and this is CNN.
June 20th, a CNN concert event. Let's celebrate, educate, and lift every voice. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
Now to some COVID news. The CDC has lifted the testing requirement for entry into the U.S., and it goes into effect at midnight tonight. Meanwhile, COVID-19 vaccine doses for the youngest population in this country, children aged 6 months through 5 years, could be available as early as June 20th. Let's bring in pediatrician Dr. Julie Morita in Chicago. Good to see you, doctor. So at this key advisory meeting set for, I think, this Wednesday, the FDA will be considering emergency use for both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines for the littlest ones. What do you expect the FDA to do this week? Do you think the approval will go through?
Hi, Emma. Great to see you again. I think this is a really exciting moment for many of us. We've all been waiting for this. We know that our youngest children under 5 have really not been able to be protected adequately from COVID. And so the FDA meeting is really a critical part in the process of getting these vaccines approved. So the FDA has released some information that suggests the Moderna vaccine is effective and safe. They haven't released their assessment of the Pfizer vaccine just yet. But if the data look good from a safety, from an efficacy perspective, then the FDA should authorize the vaccines. And then it moves to the next stage, which is the CDC's advisory committee reviewing the data and then making recommendations.
So the Biden administration announced its rollout plan this week for when these vaccines are approved, including 10 million vaccine doses available for states, tribes, territories, community health centers, federal pharmacy partners, and others to pre-order. What is the best way for parents to get their kids vaccinated?
So children are a little bit different than adults. And as a pediatrician and former health official who worked on immunizations for many years, we knew that pediatricians and family physicians and doctor offices is really the best place for children to get vaccinated. And many children are connected to these places. And so the Biden administration has been working with the AAP and many other partner organizations to really make sure healthcare providers are equipped with the information and also the supplies that they need to really begin the vaccination process when the vaccines are approved. And so it's really a matter of just getting the approval through this approval process and then getting the vaccines out into the doctor offices. There also need to be alternative places, though, for people who don't have doctors or whose doctors aren't available during the times that they need them after hours or on weekends. And so there are vaccines available in other places as well.
Yeah, and I know you wrote a piece about that there needs to be more flexibility for these parents not having to choose between vaccinating their kids and getting a paycheck. You know, I was surprised, and I guess maybe not so surprised, when I saw the latest polling from the Kaiser Family Foundation last month that only 18% of parents of children under 5 said that they would vaccinate their child right away, as soon as a vaccine was available. Why do you think that number is so low? What are you hearing from your patients?
Yeah, I think with parents and as it relates to vaccines, anytime there's a new vaccine, parents have questions and concerns about the safety, how well the vaccine works, if it's really necessary. And so I think parents really need to be able to talk to their healthcare providers, talk to the people that they trust, get information from trusted sources so that they can actually help inform their decisions to get the vaccines. So it's not uncommon for parents to wait a little bit. I think in this particular situation, it's really important that we keep in mind that the pandemic is not over. There's still many, many people who are getting sick, many people who are being hospitalized, and people who are dying because of the COVID. And so we really need to make sure that we are protecting our youngest children.
Right. And what would you say to parents who, are vaccinated and believe in science, but they might be hesitant to get their child vaccinated, or maybe they think, look, maybe I don't need to vaccinate my child because he or she already had COVID and he or she did just fine, came out of it just fine?
Yeah, I think the key thing to think about is that we know that people can get reinfected even if they have had prior infections. And so vaccination is really important. Even healthy children, it's not just children with underlying health conditions, can get seriously sick, can get hospitalized, can have the severe inflammatory disease, can develop long COVID. And so getting vaccinated is really the best way to protect children. In addition, it also helps to protect the people that are around them as well, so that they don't spread the disease to people, to their grandparents, to people with underlying health conditions. And so really vaccination is really the best thing for children to protect them and the ones around them.
Dr. Julie Morita, appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still ahead, backed by the wealth of Saudi Arabia, pro golfers cash in amid the controversy over the LIV Golf Tour. How the winner is justifying his nearly $5 million prize.
Through investment in STEM schools, Egypt has committed to building a more diverse and inclusive workforce. They are encouraging women and girls across the country to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. By ensuring that they are not just represented, but are also empowered to thrive across all sectors, Egypt has demonstrated their commitment to investing in the country's youth and in the mission to achieve sustainable development goals.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering the city's DNA.
Look at that.
Meeting people who will share its secrets.
It's going to be very cold.
And making discoveries that wow.
We're not doing that again.
It's a world of wonder.
Gorgeous.
Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
All right, you guys ready?
Alex Jones.
Those thought patterns, the three percenters, QAnon group, or the anti-vaxxers, they all originate from Alex.
How much damage can one man do to school shooting victims?
Alex Jones lied about Sandy Hook.
And the country.
The people who listen to him believe the things that he says.
CNN asks those who know him.
He's not like you or me.
Truth doesn't really matter at all.
CNN Special Report, Megaphone for Conspiracy. Alex Jones, Monday on CNN.
On the next Living Golf, discover the history of the sport in Sweden. How do they keep producing some of the world's best golfers? Hear from rising stars.
I think it's just more fun when a Swede wins.
Then visit the region's flagship event, the Scandinavian Mixed, and sit down with Europe's next Ryder Cup captain, Henrik Stenson.
This is where it all started for me.
Living Golf, Saturday on CNN, in association with Gulf Saudi.
I'm Salma Abdulaziz in Kyiv, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
Heard it all before?
But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can